everybody has their car, and every car has lots of stories, and everybody develops positive things in their car as well as negative things in their car. And the goal in understanding this concept is just trying to help you understand better who you are and how it developed and how it serves you in your life or how it doesn't serve you in your life.
Welcome to the fourth episode of What Drives You, a podcast about family systems and the car. Ellen Shute, LMSW, is an adjunct professor at the University of Michigan and has been working with family systems since 1991. She's also the founder of Empowerment Partners, a counseling and consultation firm here in Michigan. I'm Tolly Taylor, a reporter here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Also joining us today is Bethany Taylor, a former student of Ellen's in the University of Michigan Graduate Social Work Program, and also my fiance. Today we're going to be talking about Bethany's life and the cars in Bethany's life. Ellen, take it away.
Thanks, Tolly. Hi, Bethany. It's always good to be with you and have spent a semester with you teaching you about the car. Mm-hmm. So since you know about the car already, I'm going to ask you first just for a general description of your family.
Yeah, of course. First, thanks so much for having me. It's awesome to be here. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Me too.
And so my family, growing up, my first car until I was 10, and then my parents got a divorce, consisted of my dad, my mom, myself, and my younger brother, Tyler.
Okay. And as you think back to that family, can you tell me who sat where in the car? Who was in the driver's seat?
Yeah, it would definitely have been my dad in the driver's seat.
And why do you say it definitely would have been?
He was always the one sort of directing, the one kind of sort of taking charge. And my mom was really focused on us.
Okay. So where did your mom sit?
She sat in the passenger seat but turned around, really focused on me and my brother.
Okay. And what was she doing with you and your brother?
She would just be always talking to us, making sure everything was okay, making sure that we were happy, making sure we had enough to eat or a snack or that we had a toy in the car.
Okay.
And sorry, just to interject here for a second, just in case the listener, is confused about this, you said she was facing backwards, facing you and your brother. Why not your other brother? Why was it just you and Tyler that she was facing? To maybe talk about the age differences.
Yeah, well, Jason wasn't born until after my parents were divorced, actually. So my mom got pregnant during the period of the divorce.
Okay.
And so that was sort of unexpected but exciting news in our life. And yeah, me and my brother, we have an age difference of 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. Me and Tyler, and then Jason and I have like 10.5 years.
Oh, okay.
Between us.
So this car of you and your dad and your mom and Tyler mm-hmm. was the way the car looked for the first 10 years of your life.
Yes, yep.
Okay. So in that car, and you're older than Tyler?
I am, yep.
Okay. So in that car, where was your seat?
My seat, I think, probably would have been behind my dad.
Okay.
Because Tyler and I used to argue.
Okay.
A lot and bicker and fight and all that stuff. And he needed more attention from my mom.
So he was closer to her, behind her.
Exactly.
She could turn around and he would just be right there.
Right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So I'm getting a vision of this car as that there's a dad in the driver's seat. There's a mom who is somewhat turned around to the back to tend to these kids in the back. Mm-hmm. That in the back seat is you, the oldest child, and your brother, who's younger than you. And there was a lot of stuff that went on between you and your brother. Yeah. And your mother saw it as her job to be turned around in order to tend to that stuff.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we understand where people sat in the car. So now I'd like you to think about what people's roles were in the car.
Mm-hmm.
when we talked originally in our first episode of this, we talked about how this car takes this group of people from today to tomorrow to the next day. And this group of 4 people that you're describing in your family went from day to day to day in this car.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the car does that is when each person plays their role in the car. So it sounds like, from what you've said so far, that your mom's role in the car was to take care of you guys, to be the caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your dad's role in the car was?
My dad's role in the car, I would say, was to be sort of the financial breadwinner of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And that my impression of his role kind of was anything he was doing was important. And we needed to make sure that he had space to do this important thing. And so we had to sort of leave him alone, or, or he was busy or something like that.
So his role in the car was to be busy and to be productive and to provide for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like other people in the car kind of deferred to that.
Right.
Like that everybody knew deep down that that's really is what made your car go.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that your dad did all of this so that you could all be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so you respected that power that he had, and you deferred to it.
Totally. Yep.
Would you say your mom also did that?
Oh, yeah. My mom did everything around the house, so my dad would have time to work.
Okay.
And my mom also worked,
Okay.
full-time in a difficult career.
Okay.
Herself, which was accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad was also in finance. And my mom really made sure he had, time to work late hours. And she had a more flexible schedule that she could work from home during tax season. But she did all of our laundry, cooked all of our meals. I mean, we had homemade lunches every day. We would wake up to these, wonderful, gourmet breakfasts. And they would all be different depending on what we liked. She would make this wonderful bread for us in the morning, or omelets, or waffles, or, and I didn't realize till later in life that not everyone has that.
Right. So sounds like you felt really cared for and considered and cared about in this car. And it also sounds like that it gave your mom a tremendous sense of her own self, that she was able to be this kind of caretaker, caregiver.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What do you think Tyler's role was in the car?
Well, so Tyler was very adored by my dad. So my dad really wanted a boy, and they didn't find out the gender when I was born. And so I came out a girl. And the story is that my dad was so upset he cried about this.
Okay.
So when Tyler came along, he was so happy to do boy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To go to baseball and football and hockey and whatever. And for me, I think it was really hard on me. And so I sort of took that out on Tyler by fighting with him.
Uh-huh.
And Tyler, despite all this attention from my dad, just adored me.
You were his big sister.
Exactly,
yes.
Yeah. He wanted to do everything I did. He wanted to wear the clothes I wore. And I sort of wanted to be a tomboy. I wanted to do the things that boys could do to get that attention.
Right.
And to feel worthy or enough or whatever.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating how the parent's perspective could be so different than each of the children's perspective in the car.
Totally.
And you're watching your father sort of dote on your brother, and this isn't really having a great impact on your brother, but it's having a great impact on you.
Absolutely,
that's happening, and makes you feel like, how come I'm left out of that?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right, and because I got so much attention from my mom.
Yes.
But I really wanted that attention from my dad because I didn't get it. And so I would, because he was busy doing things around the house, like building things or whatever, I would try to learn those things, to do them, to be with him and help him do it. And so that way he wasn't too busy for me in that moment.
Got it. So you were looking to get attention from him however
Mm-hmm.
you could. And unlike your mom, who knew you and gave you what she knew you liked,
Right.
you, with your dad, took on the role of figuring out thinking about what he might like from you and trying that out in order to get what you needed from him.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fascinating. It's two very, very different perspectives from each of your parents.
Yeah.
Very different.
Totally. And I never saw them, like, I always felt like they worked independently rather than worked as a couple.
They did.
Yeah.
You're describing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
They did.
Yeah, like it was never both of them doing stuff with us except on vacation. It was very much like them passing us off.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And as we look at it from this point in your life, we can understand the discord between them and that it might have evidenced itself in your car in that way.
Totally.
Yes, and you somehow knew it.
Yeah.
You knew it deep down.
Yeah, I definitely knew it for sure.
That's really interesting.
And so one of my favorite details when you recount different stories about your childhood is that you would call these family meetings, and that's just something so unique from any sort of childhood stories I've heard from friends and family and different things like that. Do you think that decision to do that was a play to gain favoritism from your mom or from your dad, or was it just your personality and your desire driving that?
Or could I say,
oh yeah,
your attempt at, like, maybe I can bring everybody together.
I think that's what it was. I think it was my attempt to bring everyone together because I was very, because these family meetings that I would call would really make my dad angry.
Oh.
And they would elicit sympathy from my mom. And my mom would be like, whoa, we're not listening to her. We need to listen. And so it would very much be like my dad walking away and my mom staying there saying, like, it's okay, don't worry, I'm going to talk to him.
And what were some of the family meetings about? What was the subject matter?
Well, and my favorite one to tell actually is that my dad said I wasn't allowed to play football, tackle football, and I was like 8 at the time. But I was very small. I'm like 5'2" now, and I'm very petite, and so I was a tiny little girl. I was very fragile looking, and I was always, even though my brother was 3.5 years younger, we were always around the same height and weight. For those couple of years. So Tyler got to play football. And I really hated that. I got so angry because all I wanted to do was play football. And my dad was like, absolutely not. Like, you are too young. You are too little. And I was like, well, the only reason you're telling me I cannot play is because I am a girl, and that's wrong.
Wow, you were empowered.
I know, exactly. I'm like, I don't know where this comes from.
And your dad walked away?
My dad walked away really upset, and my mom was like, we'll talk to him. And so they came back and said, you can play, but you have to finish the season. Like, you have to see it through.
Was that like a veiled threat of some type, or that was just their idea about things?
My dad was worried I was doing it, which was probably true, for like a rise. Not really because I wanted to play.
Got it.
And he was nervous that I was going to get hurt. So he was very much like, well, if you're going to do this, you're going to stick through it, and we're not quitters. We're not going to quit anything. We're going to start it, and we're going to see it through.
Okay. So there's a lot in that little story that picks up on some of the things that I said in the other sessions of this podcast. Number one, that your mom's reaction to this was to be this caretaker and try to help you get what you want. And your dad's reaction to this was to kind of turn his back and walk away. And earlier I said that very often parents do that, withdraw from a situation because they don't know that they have anything of value to offer up at that time. It isn't going how they want, and they sort of don't know that they could maybe say something that might change it. And so what they do then is they distance themselves in some way or another. not all parents walk away. Some of them just shut down and stop talking. But your experience of that is what matters for you.
Yeah.
How did you experience that? That your dad walked away, your mom said, I'll take care of it, I'll talk to him. How was that for you?
I think the lesson I kind of took from it was that you need to advocate for yourself, and people are not going to listen unless you sort of demand them to listen to you.
Okay, so it's really interesting, and it really speaks to, on a lot of levels, to the strength of your car, because your car, with all of its roles and rules, one of the rules in that car was that anybody in this car can call a meeting and everybody is at least going to come.
Right.
There are many, many cars where the little girl would not have that kind of authority.
Mm-hmm.
But in your car did have that kind, allowed you to have that kind of authority.
Totally.
And so you learned from that you get to have a voice, you get to have your thoughts and feelings about things. So if we think about what type of car this was when we talk about the 4 types of cars,
mm-hmm.
what I'm hearing that there's a lot of the real car in there, but there's also maybe some of the other types of a controlled car. Did you feel like your dad's
Yes.
just, yeah, I'm having a hard time expressing it in words, but his busyness, his power and stuff controlled the car
Totally, yeah.
in some ways? And were there other ways where you felt like you needed to be perfect, or you don't feel like that was in your car so much?
No, I definitely felt like there was a piece that I needed to, I wouldn't say perfect,
Shoulds.
but I would say I needed to adapt to get attention.
Okay.
Or to get love, or to get whatever, sort of fill in the blank of that.
Yes, right. So that all of those things somehow were in that car, all of those. Did you feel ever like it was a chaotic car?
Maybe after the divorce.
Uh-huh. Right. So,
for a little bit. It was definitely a crazy time, I think.
Yes. I want to talk about that. But the really important part about this is that the homeostasis of your car growing up until you were 10 allowed you to have a voice, to try to get what you needed. You learned how to be taken care of by your mom, and you learned how to try to read other people to see what they might need
mm-hmm.
from your dad.
Yeah.
Okay? So if we think about those 3 things, after we talk a little bit about what happened after the divorce,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask you how those 3 things evidence themselves in your car today. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the cars of after the divorce. Was the divorce a surprise to you?
Not really. I mean, it's hard to say. I mostly grew up in a neighborhood where around the same time a lot of people's parents were getting divorced.
Okay. So the subject of divorce was not.
Right. Was not a
common.
Surprise. And I had sort of known that my parents didn't have the same sort of relationship that I saw like other parents
interesting
having. I knew that there was kind of like a partnership or like business deal arrangement.
Yes.
That felt cold.
So you felt the coldness.
Yeah, totally. And I felt my mom really having to adapt and sacrifice a lot to keep the car going or to keep my dad happy. Or
it's so interesting that you noticed that, because so many people grow up in cars where that happens and they just think that's how cars are. But somehow there was something in you where you noticed that.
Yeah, and I even asked my mom at one point, like, how come you and Dad never kiss?
Oh, wow.
And she just, like, started crying.
Oh, wow.
But she had said that about me from a very young age, too, that I just sort of was intuitive is how she described it.
Right.
Where I could just take situations and go underneath the surface.
Yes.
Naturally.
That's a gift of yours. That's in your DNA, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
However, this car that you grew up in for these 10 years of your life allowed that. It encouraged that. So that you could say to your mom, how come you never kiss?
Right.
Right. That's what's really important about this car. It's unfortunate that it didn't work out for the long run, but you still got so much good stuff from this car.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Really, really good stuff, especially as a social worker.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and so something that Beth and I have talked about a lot previously is that she thinks that maybe some of the reasons that she has healthy relationships now and healthier cars now than maybe, is it fair to say, than maybe your brothers, is that, yeah, for the first 10 years of her life, she had a mostly real car. So my question to you, Ellen, is this attachment theory? Is this, what have you found from all of your work with family systems and with the car in terms of how formative the first 10 years are? Is that what's really necessary, or does it depend on the person? I guess, what do you think?
Yes to all of that. There's no way that with the mother that you describe that you did not have a secure attachment with her. It had to have been. Any mother who's looking to her child, knowing what they like, providing for them in the way that she did, that isn't something that you start doing when your child is 8 years old. She knew all that about you, and because she was attuned to you. You and her had this attuned relationship where you knew each other long before you had words for it, but it obviously evidences itself in how the rest of that relationship turns out.
And honestly, I just probably made a little mistake there. I shouldn't have just used attachment theory without explaining a little bit. Ellen, do you think you could just give a quick background on it?
Definitely. So attachment theory is the belief that how the relationship is created between us as infants for the first 6 months to a year between us and our primary caregiver forms a template for how we then enter into relationships for the rest of our life. That's really boiled down.
Yeah, but that's the bare essential. That's what we need. Yeah.
Right. And so what we want in that relationship is a parent who is able to respond enough of the time to their baby's cues for the baby to learn, and babies learn this long before they have language to say it, that they matter, that they're important, that people are there for them, that people will take care of them when they're in distress, that the world may feel terrible one minute, but then somebody is going to help you to make it better. Really important learnings that happen by the time we're a year. And so that relationship forms the foundation then for the relationship between the parent and the child for the rest of the child's development, basically. We believe in my field that the attachment relationship really sets a lifetime trajectory for children as to how they feel about themselves and other people, how they then become relational. I teach a class on adolescent development and behavior, and we talk in that class about a specific teenager, and we consider what type of attachment this person likely had based on their current behavior. So that's what happens. So this mother who I'm a mother like this too. I enjoy serving my children, making sure they have just what they want, and I know exactly what each one of them wants. That part's about me. But the part that my children get out of that is feeling that in this lifetime they're entitled to have someone who knows them, who cares about them, who wants them to have what they want in most circumstances. And so that then becomes the way that we then attach as adults with that knowledge or without that knowledge, basically.
Okay. And so you were saying before about Beth that, through at least 10 years old, she had a mostly real car. And so you think just sort of going from that, I think you two were about to discuss what this produced in the family and how that sort of affected later years.
Yes. So I would ask you briefly,
Mhm.
after the divorce, you were in 2 cars?
Yeah, so my dad and his girlfriend at the time, and then my mom, me, Tyler, and then Jason, my brother, was just born.
Okay.
So it was a totally different car and experience.
Okay. And how do you feel like your role might have been the same or different in those 2 cars?
So I think my role in the new car was very much like the pseudo parent.
With your mom's car.
Yes.
Because
So,
she was in the driver's seat.
yep, she was in the driver's seat, and she was the youngest child growing up. So she never knew how to do this.
Yeah, I can relate.
And she didn't know, but even before my brother was born, like I remember I picked out a name with my mom for my brother. And I was so upset that I couldn't be in the delivery room, but it's because the delivery room doesn't allow children under 12.
Right. But you were the dad.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so, the whole family kind of laughed about that, but yeah, for me, my 10 and a half, 11-year-old self at the time, that was really tough.
Yes, right. So in that car with your mom, maybe you were even somewhat in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And in the car with your dad and his new girlfriend, where were you in that car?
I was the one who really started fights. And me and her really didn't get along, and my brother Tyler, she would bring us all these gifts, I remember, and I wouldn't accept them. And my brother was like, well, cool, I get a new Nintendo, or I get a new, he
Yes.
was like, great, happy to just go along with it.
Right.
And I would get so mad at him. I'm like, how can you do this? Like, how can you accept this? This is more than a gift. Don't you see all this stuff? And he was like, well, I don't think it's more than, he was 3, I don't know, he was like 7 or 8.
Right.
He was like, I just think it's cool.
He was happy to get a Nintendo. Right. So it's interesting because who you continued to be, even throughout all this, was the girl with the voice.
Yeah, totally.
That's fascinating. That
Yeah.
The first homeostasis allowed you to have a voice, and this second homeostasis also allowed you to have a voice. So your dad, in his distancing, it might have felt like he had a lot of power, only you pretty much did what you needed to in both instances.
Right.
Because there's a lot of second cars where one of the parents is with someone new, and the kids are not allowed to talk about it, not allowed to argue, not allowed ever to say anything bad or mean or nasty to this new person. We have to like this person.
Right.
So this car wasn't like that. So that's interesting that was the carryover, your voice.
Yeah.
So just in what you said there, I guess the question that jumps to mind is, you talked about how Beth's father created, made this distance. And it sounds like Beth stepped in, and instead of just allowing that free space to stay there, she took it. And she made the homeostasis a situation where she's very vocal.
Exactly.
Is that sort of the very fine line where there are sort of choices that are made that determine what the homeostasis is going to be like? Whereas Beth is the person who jumped forward and took that space and made it her own. Someone else might have stayed, just sort of stayed back, let that open space be there, let that distance be there, and not have acted on it.
So what I would say is Beth might have done that in any car, but the response of the rest of the car would have revealed the homeostasis.
I see.
So the first time she would have said something off color or not nice or expressing her dislike of the situation. If she would have been in more of a controlled car, she would have gotten a look or a word or a something that would have said to her, stop, don't do that. And everyone else in the car would have done their part to support that. So in her car, it might have been that her brother might have done something to draw attention at that moment, which would have supported someone else quieting her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens in the homeostasis. It isn't that people don't try. It's people try all kinds of things to challenge the homeostasis.
Yeah.
But in her car, nobody fought back. So it allowed room for her voice.
Yeah. And I think my dad definitely attempted to try to get us to like her and go along with it. And I think part of the problem was I would call my mom when my dad sort of tried to set those rules, and then she would come and pick me up.
That's the really hard part about divorce.
Yeah.
Is that there are these two cars, and each car has tremendous influence on the children. And the people in this car can't control what the people in this car do.
Right.
Right. That's so that you hear often about the kids playing one parent against each other, following, right, this kind of thing. And it gives you power, but it also leaves it so that there's not a lot of structure. And I'm not sure that that's the healthiest thing for kids of divorce, is to be able to call the other parent and have them come and get you.
Oh, totally. That caused a lot of,
I'm sure it did,
fights between my dad and my mom, for sure.
Ideally, when I work with families in that situation, I would encourage your mom to be able to say to you, you can handle it. You can stay there. I know you don't like it, but I know you can handle it. That would have ultimately been empowering for you, rather than you thinking, I can't take this. Someone's got to save me from it.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
we've
really
never thought about that before. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems to have worked out.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me quickly how these things, this girl with the voice and the girl who was able to be taken care of, as well as the girl who was able to try to figure out what somebody else might have needed from her, how have those things evidenced in the car that you and Tolly have created now?
Yeah, okay, so the car we've created, I think it's a lot present in social work, in the line of work that I'm in, for sure.
Okay.
In our car, I would say Tolly does take care of me, and can sort of sense when I'm upset or when I'm stressed or whatever, and I think that's the hardest part, is the receiving.
Okay, I was going to ask you, and you allow him to?
Yeah, I think over time I've allowed him to do that more.
Okay.
As trust has built.
Okay.
But for me, that trust really takes consistency and time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you had it from your mom. You needed to attach to him before you were going to trust him to take care of you.
Totally.
Yeah. It's like a repetition of that early relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think there's definitely a dynamic in which, sometimes I'm the one taking care of you, just like I sort of played that role in my car. But there's also the dynamic that you're an oldest child and I'm a youngest child. And so sometimes Beth sets the schedule. Beth,
she has a voice.
Yeah. Beth, for instance, is very talented at, oh, that looks good. I'll have a bite of your food. She is slightly less talented, I would say, at, yes, my food does look good. Won't you please have a bite of it?
I know.
But no, I think in that respect, you talked about in, is it the postmodern car where people take turns driving?
Yes, right.
That's sort of my sense for our relationship, because there are those sort of different things. There's the thing where Beth likes to be taken care of, and that's very much my natural inclination. But then there's also the dynamic where I'm the youngest child. I'm not 100% used to setting the schedule, and Beth's the oldest child, so Beth is the girl with the voice and does that.
The goal in the car, as you guys are starting out, is that each of you honors and respects each other's strengths, and that when it's this person's strengths, they're driving, and when it's this person's strengths, they're driving, and that you have the ability to say, I got to get out of the driver's seat for a little bit, and that the other person will take over. And if you decide that you're going to have children in your marriage one day, they're going to see that. And then the two of you will need to come together in this real car and create what you believe is a structure that works for everybody. That's flexible.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. Well, I feel like Beth and I could be sitting here asking you questions all day. Are there any final points to make? Is there anything you want to preview for the next episode?
The final point is that everybody has their car, and every car has lots of stories, and everybody develops positive things in their car as well as negative things in their car. And the goal in understanding this concept is just trying to help you understand better who you are and how it developed and how it serves you in your life, or how it doesn't serve you in your life, and to be able to have compassion for yourself around maybe that's something I'd like to change because it isn't working for me anymore. So I think in future episodes, I'd like to continue on talking about different types of cars, and my focus mostly is on the predictable effects for children in certain kinds of cars and how to undo that, how to make it better. There's nothing that isn't fixable. There's nothing that happens in a car that doesn't have a remedy or doesn't have an ability to be changed or understood differently. My whole car metaphor is about helping people think, oh, I get that now, sure. Like I was trained to do that, but now I don't have to do that anymore as an adult. And so I'd like to talk about how children are formed, what it means about the homeostasis, and what that means for us as adults.
Yeah, all really important topics. Definitely. Just quickly, it didn't seem right to chime in and add this at the time, but with Beth's football memory, that's related to my favorite fun fact about us as a couple, which is that I'm the sports reporter. One of us has played football, and it was not me. So
that's very funny.
Yeah.
I like that. That is a fun fact.
That's right. We can end on that note. All right. Well, from everyone here, from Ellen Shute and Bethany Diedrich and Tolly Taylor, this is the What Drives You podcast, and we'll catch you next time.